I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, guys. Well, that only took 14 minutes to get the audio started, but welcome to West Point, Mississippi, home of Mossy Oak brand camo, the Gamekeeper Studios. We're all excited because turkey season is right around the corner. We have flipped the page, so to speak.
It is time.
And I busted out a mouth call on the way to work this morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Use your Merlin bird ID.
Yeah, you know.
It gets earlier every year. It's just like Christmas lights come up earlier and earlier every year.
Yeah, the days are getting a little longer. Feels good in the mornings.
Well, the whole idea of like burning and nesting, just predator nest control, just kind of lets it get started.
It's turkey time. That's right. It's time to talk about it.
I saw a plume of smoke on my way home over the public lands. So
nice.
I know things are getting fired up. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have intended that pun.
That's pretty good there,
Dudley. Would have been good. So,
Yeah.
well, so today we've got, I'm going to say he's probably our most popular guest. I know we absolutely love having him.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Michael Chamberlain, he's
in the house.
There he is right there on Zoom. And somewhere in that we've also, if people will listen, you will hear Toxie's voice.
You will?
You will. You will.
He's somewhere in the Ethernet.
Yeah.
He won't tell us where. There's something.
He's in an undisclosed location.
Yeah.
Closing out.
So that Chinese balloon could have been looking for where he is.
Yeah, they wouldn't have found him. I'm just telling you.
I'm in the Mossy Oak White House bunker.
That's right.
Secure and undisclosed. As I could show, I'm looking at a sign. It says the porch of no worries. So y'all know right where I am.
I know where that is.
No doubt about it. That's a good spot to be in.
So, Mike, you're not on the porch of no worries, right? Where are you in the office of a lot to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am not on the porch. I am sitting at my desk working feverishly or trying to. Busy time of year, sure.
As turkey season approaches, I'm sure you're a popular guy. Everybody's wanting interviews and whatnot. But so for what message are you trying to get out here right before turkey season to guys? Is there one or two main points that you want to try to communicate to listeners?
Appreciate the opportunity to chase the bird and slow down. That's what I tell people.
There you go.
I'm already caught up in the go. It's almost here. It's almost here. It's almost here. And before you know, it'll be over with, and we'll be at the end of May thinking, I wish it was turkey season still, but it's not. So, yeah,
it happens every year.
Yep.
So yeah, I learned from. I'll echo that. He said, "Slow down." I always, my word that screams in my ear every year more and more and more is patience. And, you go out there on a day when it's not happening and, people are so almost obsessive about wanting to kill one and stuff. And it's just kind of sad. Just be so grateful you're out in the woods. I mean, where I am, it's a screen porch. So I can hear birds singing. And quite honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw some turkeys in a minute where I'm looking. And, shoot, it doesn't get any better than that. Just don't forget to hold church in the spring woods. It's the time of rebirth for everything. And man, do not miss the chance, because if you do that in the spring, you hadn't missed out. Turkeys or no turkeys. Now look, I'm the most depressed guy in the world when they're not gobbling, but just don't miss the chance to enjoy the spring, like Doc said. Slow down a little bit.
Yeah, that's great advice. So. Well, guys, let's move this thing along. We always talk about blood on the biologic. Any youth hunters that y'all are aware of? And I think
there's one.
Yeah, who wants to tell that one? So, Toxie, you want to tell what you know?
So, yeah, congratulations goes to my granddaughter, Heavy Stubbs. That killed her first deer, 6 years old. It was, unexpected a little bit. I didn't know she was quite so ready. She'd been asking to go. And she'd actually been the day before and shot at one and missed. And so instead of getting discouraged, she asked to practice some more. And so it was kind of a quick, cool story. She was here in the front yard, and Vandy took one of these old block targets and put a big piece of paper up on it and put it about 50 yards from there, and got her settled where she had a rest and everything. And he had drew like a black, little bit about the size of a quarter, maybe a little bit bigger, and with a Sharpie right in the middle, so give her something to aim for. So she fires the first one, and he's looking in binoculars. He's like, oh, kind of trying to sugarcoat it. I think you didn't touch anything. Maybe it's on the edge, but I don't see anything. Let's try another one. You probably just flinched. So he puts a bullet in. She shoots again. And he's like, maybe we need to go down there and see. Maybe it's on the edge of the target to know which way you're off. And they walk down to the target, and she's keyholed 2 perfect shots right through the middle. That's why he couldn't see them.
Oh, wow.
Because they were in that black.
Nice.
So that's a cool. And so subsequently she goes out, and that afternoon late, I got the text from Bandy, and he said, he's on the ground. And just a few minutes later, and honestly, Rob was with him.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so he didn't record it like for video. He's got it though. It was just on his camera. He wanted to try to take pictures. And she got the blood on her face. She got the whole routine. She was so proud of herself, ready to do it again. And, talked about what it meant and everything too, even at 6 years old. So, yeah, that's a pretty cool thing when it's your first grandchild, and especially for Vandy. I think Vandy's on cloud 9 as much as she is.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about it. Well, congratulations to Evie and Sarah Francis and Vandy. That's awesome.
It really is.
And of course you, Toxie.
Well, to hear Vandy tell his side, it was a heck of a hunt.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, she's in a shooting house that sits there that, it's actually where we kind of usually say for Daddy, and he hadn't been able to go this year. But it's kind of high, even for him. I have to put like 3 boat cushions in the chair for him to sit on to be able to shoot out of. It's just for whatever reason a little bit too high. It's not too bad for me, but same for her. I think she had to get in his lap and then on cushions on top of that to be able to be high enough to see. So it took some doing, but they pulled it off.
I tell you what, the blood on the biologic has kind of morphed into a chance to give shout outs to first timers.
Oh man, it's all about the kids.
I do,
really
and I
is.
get a lot of feedback from people going, "My kid just beamed when they heard their name."
Yeah, we're always looking too. I mean, I see one, I take a screenshot. So
yeah, let us know too. We're proud to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome.
That's great.
Well, Mike, following you on at the Wild Turkey Dock, looked like you took some young people and looked like they had a good time and some success this season.
I did. I entertained 2 of Austin's very closest friends at our camp in Louisiana. And actually one of the Garrett, his best friend was there. He had never killed a deer. And I took him and kind of sat with him, and the other young man, Michael, has hunted a little bit. And first afternoon we were there, I found this old 25-06 that Austin shot his first deer with, and there were 4 shells that we could find. So he shot once on the range, and we had 3 left over. And doe comes out right at dark, and she gets straight, and he center punches her with a perfect shot. She never makes it out of the plot, and we of course we're high-fiving and hugging and having a good time. And so that was his first deer, and lo and behold, 2 days later, a nice shooter 8-point came out, and same 25-06. We're down to 2 bullets now. That's all that's left. He made a perfect shot on this 8-point, and it was about 5 minutes later, the other young man, Michael, shot a really nice doe. So it was a pretty rewarding couple of days there.
That's awesome.
Very emotional, but we had a good time.
I bet so.
Therapeutic.
I got chill bumps, Doc.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it is. You got some stuff going on. Lanny, you're looking at me like I'm not going to enjoy what you're about to go and do. What is it?
It's the blood on the biologic segment, I would say. There is a little news.
Oh, yeah.
I heard that there was one of our native nurseries customers, Dan Donald, killed a really nice 8-point, a really heavy old 8-point, and he's a podcast listener, and he thinks it's pork chop. So I've got a picture of it right here. How long has it been since you've seen pork chop?
Yeah, well, so I was looking back in my phone, and I had photos of him in late November, and he disappeared. And he's not an 8; he's an 11. So
is that kickers?
No, it's not kickers. It's just times. But to let everybody up to speed, I've had a relationship with a deer for 3 years, and I call him pork chop. And I think he was about 4 years old when I first saw him, and he was just a big fat deer.
Yeah.
He didn't have really big antlers, but he had and he could have been going downhill, but he was definitely mature.
Well, I've got a picture of him right here. This one there was harvested on December 6th. So it's kind of in line with your time frame. And on the hoof, he was at 220 pounds. So let's pass it on down there and see if this is pork chop.
Well, let me see.
So Dan ordered trees, and I put 2 and 2 together and figured out that he was close to Bobby.
Yeah.
That is not pork chop.
You were
Can I get the horns?
Well, Dan came by here yesterday, and he's obviously over there in your neighbor, and this is a fine 8-point, so congratulations on that. And we just wanted to see if you might have recognized him.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So
pork chop still remains.
That's not pork chop. That's Vienna sausage. I recognize that. So.
Well, I'll tell Dan.
All right, well, let's turn this around. We got Mike Chamberlain, and we need to be good stewards of his time. And Mike, we're so happy that you're here. We look, you're just like family. We like to cut up when we're around you, and you know what? I really can't see your reaction here. I can't tell if what's going on there. But we want to turn our conversation toward turkeys. And as this season is, right now we're just so excited when you look on social media. So many people are talking about nest predators and putting out traps, and they're burning and all that. And it's from a researcher and a guy who's dedicated his life to wild turkeys. You got to be proud of all this, this groundswell that's going on. And what else can a guy do? From where you're sitting there in Georgia, from your office, what else? What do guys need to be thinking about? And I want to specifically ask: is there something we don't need to be doing?
Well, I mean, I would say if you want to do something, identify what that something might be for you in your situation, whether it's trapping predators or improving habitat or the prescribed burning, planning, wise, sustainable harvest. I mean, you name it. I got asked this actually earlier today on another podcast. It's, what's the take home? And the take home to me is figure out how you can contribute in whatever small way that is, and do it, and be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And the groundswell that I see is awesome. I mean, I was telling this person, there's more research going on for wild turkeys now than at any time in my career. Even back in the 80s and early 90s, the heyday of the true pioneers were active during that time in the research world, and now there's more research by far than there was then. And that's really, I mean, to me, it just speaks volumes in two ways. One, that people and agencies realize that there are concerns with turkeys and that we need to do a better job at understanding the issues facing the bird, but more importantly, that agencies and groups, conservation groups and donors, landowners, see the relevance in this bird and prioritize it enough to put the kind of money that's being spent now into science. That's something I have not seen since I was a graduate student, and I'm 51 years old and I've been doing this a long time. So that to me is something that makes me smile, although it's predicated on the fact that we have issues facing this bird. But the fact that we're prioritizing the bird as we are gives me hope that we'll right the ship and round the corner, and we'll 50 years from now, we'll have sustainable populations of birds, and we'll be able to hunt them, and our grandkids will be able to hunt them, and so on and so forth.
Amen.
Yeah, yeah, that's so exciting to hear. And then it seems like states are starting to kind of change some of their regulations a little modification going
Yeah.
on here and there.
Yeah.
And so all that just kind of adds up and is all trending in a really good direction.
Yeah, I just see that there's so much attention being paid to wild turkeys now that maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but I didn't, pre-COVID, I didn't see people talking about turkeys in the summer or the fall. Turkeys conversations were now February, March, April, May, and then you kind of saw turkeys just kind of fall off the radar screen. That was my perception. And now it's easy to strike up a conversation about turkeys 12 months a year in almost any forum, because people that are thinking about the bird are thinking about the bird all year and not just during the spring. And that to me is a real positive.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure is. Taxi, I know you hear all this as well, and you're really plugged into the turkey world. But what's your takeaway on?
I mean, not as much as Doc. Nobody probably as much. He's at the very top, if there are others. But listening to his comments, one thing I feel really proud of is because this is baby, I don't know, 15 or plus years of a concerted effort by us as a brand. To make this a priority and make caring for your wildlife a 52-week, 12-month affair. And actually to the point where caring for the wildlife and taking care of your place is, a sport almost and a pastime, not just like something you do to shoot more game. And the reason I was getting to that is like one of the things, two thoughts popped into my mind as I was listening to Doc. One was, the stuff that's happening even with us, and, the state of Mississippi is much improved. I mean, I think he will tell you there's a lot of raised a light in the last year on turkey net's success that people were getting pretty dark feeling about. But like in our situation, it didn't happen overnight. We've been doing this and doing this and doing this. And like we talked about, some of our best friends in the wildlife biology world there's no big one-hit wonder burn and next year you have a lot of turkeys, or trap and all of a sudden it's going to rain poults. It's just that continued that continued emphasis, the continued work year over year over year that turns the tide, even in managing deer and getting them bigger and having better genetics and all the things. It is a process. And so what I feel like is happening due to all the work of people like him, led by him, and I feel like we've had a hand in it too, is now it's part of the process. It didn't used to be, as he mentioned, it used to be turkey season was over, turn your attention to something else. And it was all results driven, just like the deer. It was only about what they scored, and what were my trophy, patterning a whitetail, what were my trophy patterning techniques and all those things. And not to say that isn't going on today, not to say that we don't enjoy killing turkeys during turkey season, but everybody understands there's such a broad awakening of taking care of them is the only way we're going to keep having the quality. And B, that's A, and B is you wake up and learn that taking care of them is even more fun than killing them. And to me, that's when we've actually arrived and we are deserving of this privilege to hunt. There's a lot of, and you can't just sit there and preach to people. I know people think I sound preachy sometimes, but I just implore people to find that it's such a better life than just worried about, bragging on how many you killed or something. It's so empty. And you know what? The next year, it'll be even worse on you. So I thought about that. And the thing that popped in my head was one, not overnight. It's been a long process. And I do really like where we are. And the other thing is also, I would say, we're realizing we have to pull together, that we can't be all divided out. We can't have organizations pointing fingers at other organizations or people complaining. It's clear that people that love turkeys have got to pull together, and the leadership has to come from the very best researchers, because that's the information, that has to be the tip of the broadhead. So that was one thought. Other thought jumped in my mind, it's along kind of the same lines. He talked about all the people involved in helping affect their own turkey populations. And that again is the gamekeeper way. Y'all hear me say it all the time. What I wish for all this, and maybe someday when I'm gone, what we leave behind is that everybody knows that they can participate in conservation. And the word jumped in my mind listening to Doc saying, don't compare. What can kill the enthusiasm and the love for doing the work that you do is you look around, your neighbor's got twice as much land and more resources, and he's trapping more and he's killing more and he's making a bigger difference. Don't even dare compare what you're doing. Just love it for the joy of doing. If you can affect one, think about the miracle of one turkey hatching. If you could affect one poult that won the hatch, you should feel great. Don't compare yourself to someone else, and go out there and live that life of abundance by giving back to nature. So anyway, I'll sum it up in those two. Don't compare and not overnight. Those are my two thoughts.
Wow. Yeah, that's
I
good.
like it.
Hey, so while we're here, Lanny, and we've got the good doctor with us, why don't you talk about this website that you've been working on?
Yeah, super excited. Dr. Chamberlain actually started, developing a place to publish his work and to influence consumer use. You know what hunters and guys are out there doing. So super proud to be working with him on that now, and looking forward to telling more people about it in the future. But it is thewildturkeylab.com. So
yeah. Mike, can you tell us from where you sit there, what the vision of this thing is and how it came to be?
This started about a year, maybe almost 2 years ago. I wanted to try to develop a website that would function in a number of ways. One would be kind of a central repository for the work that I've done. It would also be a place that someone could go to access all of the information that I've posted through my social media accounts at one-stop shop, if you will. I also wanted to have a place that I could post informational videos about things that may be interesting to people that love turkeys, and everything in between. I wanted it to kind of serve as a one-stop shop for people that wanted to at least look at the science that I've done on turkeys and be able to digest it very easily. So I reached out to a web developer. I used some funding that I have through an endowment here at the university, and we kind of started piecing this together. And I realized that it takes a lot of effort, and it takes money, and it takes time to do this. And that had me, through conversations, obviously with you guys, that had me kind of broach this idea where we could partner here and develop a website that carries the Mossy Oak brand, that is a true repository for turkey science, which will now include historical pieces of science from researchers long before myself. As we develop the site, you basically can see the full history of how research has worked on this bird, where we started, where we've been, where we are now. And I'm really excited about it. I'm hoping that people will be able to go to the site and spend time learning more about what they already know, or learning information about things they really had no idea even functioned or existed in wild turkey populations. And I'm also hoping it's going to be a way for people to learn more about things that maybe their interest has been piqued a little bit. Maybe they saw a social media post about a topic and they want to go and learn more about that topic, whether it's management or predation or genetics or reproduction or whatever it is. This site would serve as a conduit for people to be more engaged with the science in a way where it's very easily understandable and digestible. So that's kind of my vision for it.
And it's going to be constantly updated, from what I understand. So, as new information as comes to light, it'll be posted and be available for guys to do their own read through, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. The idea is to have it constantly updated where as content are delivered through my platforms and your platforms that pertain to science and my work, that it constantly updates the site to where it's real time, where information that is, for instance, I get paid to write journal articles and publish in scientific outlets, but I'm passionate about taking that science and explaining what it actually means to the people that matter, which are turkey hunters and land managers and landowners who are the future of this bird. So nobody is going to read these scientific articles, but if they could read a very short summary of what the science showed, and then more importantly, what it means to them, and this is constantly updated, then the science becomes relevant and it becomes engaging to them because they can tap into it at any time and it makes sense.
Yeah, that's all. So the name of the website is
wildturkeylab.com.
and it's going to launch here this week.
Yeah, there'll be some announced at NWTF. We're going to be following Dr. Mike in a lot of his research and a lot of his studies. So look for a lot of in the field information from him. Like I said, and plus it'll be an aggregator for his social media accounts too. So super excited about tagging along in the field and documenting some stuff and getting it out there for everybody.
So Mike, I'm going to implore on you to really lean hard on Lanny from about March 15th or 20th.
You're killing me. You're killing me.
Through mid-April. Please lean on him hard right in there. Make him get this done.
Mike, he's trying to keep me out of the dummy line, so I always have my work done before March 15th.
Yeah, your work's never done. So look, okay, all that's great, and it's very exciting. But we want to talk turkey hunting with
absolutely.
So I'm going to throw out the first little comment. I want to create a scenario, Mike. Imagine the first part of turkey season. You're sitting somewhere in Georgia. Some birds have flown down. You've yelped at them. All of a sudden, oh my God, here they come, and they come over the rise, and there's three. And one of them is strutting. One of them kind of struts a little bit.
Yeah.
And one of them doesn't strut. They all look identical, though, like they're probably out of the same hatch. What bird are you going to focus on and concentrate on? And how is that different than what you would have done, say, 10 years ago?
I would shoot the bird that wasn't strutting and wasn't gobbling. And the reason I would do that is because now this is predicated on this 30-second snapshot that these birds come over the hill and I have 30 seconds to evaluate who's who. But if clearly there's one bird that's strutting and the other birds are not, then he is very likely the dominant bird in that group. He's socially dominant to the other two birds. If there's a bird that's clearly an outcast that is not strutting, he's not displaying at all, very likely isn't gobbling either, then that's the bird I'm going to target, at least at the onset of the season, because at least in my mind, that ensures that dominant bird survives another day. Now, that's predicated on the notion that, if we're at the end of the season and that scenario played out, then it very likely wouldn't matter which bird was removed, and I would take the shot that was the cleanest, most ethical shot that would result in the bird dying as quickly as possible. So it really depends on the timing of the hunt to answer your question.
Yeah. So, the reason I asked the question, Mike, is I'm doing a lot of research. I'm listening to you in a lot of different platforms and reading. And, there's a lot of talk about that early in the season messing up. You've discussed it here. The pecking order can get out of whack, and it takes a few days or we don't know how long
to get reestablished.
To reestablish. So I think that's one of the reasons. That's why I asked that question, to understand in your mind which one of those you would try to target.
There's uncertainty. We don't understand how that works. We don't understand. Well, first of all, it may not matter at all. That's a possibility, but the science suggests that it does. And therefore, if given the chance, I would err on the side of what we do know. And what we do know is that dominance matters. Dominant toms breed more hens than non-dominant toms. So most poults in a population are coming from dominant toms. And if I was in a situation, and this is my philosophy, and I'm not trying to convince someone else to have it, but I personally, I do not care what the beard length is. I do not care what the spur length is. If 3 toms walk up there and one of them dies, to me, it's irrelevant how big he is, how strong he is. I don't care.
Right.
I just don't care. The hunt has come to a culmination that is what we're after. That's why we're there. It's part of who we are. And I'm successful and I can enjoy the bird and go on. So it doesn't matter that those intangible things that some people pay attention to, I just don't anymore. And I did when I was younger. But as I've evolved as a hunter, I've realized that in the grand scheme of life, none of that matters. When you're dead and gone and your hunting career is over, nobody's going to give a damn how many 1.5 inch spurs you have on your lanyard. You're not going to sit there in retirement when you're unable to do this and think back about the biggest birds you ever killed. I don't catch myself doing that. What I catch myself reflecting on are the days that it worked out, the birds that were the toughest to kill, the birds that exemplified the experience. They came from a long distance. They tried the backdoor route and I was able to get turned on them. I never sit and reflect on, do you remember that bird you shot in Virginia that day that had that paintbrush of a beard? I don't even think about that anymore. I think about all of the other things that go into hunting the bird successfully, and spur length and beard length don't matter. So to me, if I thought there was a chance that taking that bird that doesn't appear to be the dominant guy could matter, not that it does, but it could, then that's my personal decision to take that bird.
That's good. So,
Yeah.
Dudley, have you got a question?
Yeah, I think it's just interesting how you have to be so careful about what you say because of, so many people have their eyes and ears on what you say, and you're using facts, but you're also using logic to help push your decision making progress. And I think that's the only way to go. Somebody may have a little bit different opinion, but hey, that's okay. We're all in it for the same.
There are even people in the research community that disagree strongly with me, and that's fine. There are people that will say, well, there's no evidence that any of this matters. And I disagree with that. I can show you evidence that dominance hierarchies matter or they would not be in place. That's the reality. I mean, animals with dominance hierarchies have those hierarchies because they matter and they affect their entire lives. So to me, it's nonsensical to think it doesn't matter who you kill. The question becomes, does it matter when you kill them and what is the magnitude of the effect? If the magnitude of the effect is really slight, then it doesn't matter. If the magnitude of effect is significant, then we need to understand it. And that's kind of my take home is, if you disagree with the logic, that's fine. You don't have to use the logic. But if you carefully read the science about other species that function like turkeys, the logic is quite clear that it matters. And that's why there's so much research ongoing, and there's research going on in states where they're making, regulations changes to see if it matters. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe if you only harvest a small percentage of toms, it makes no difference when you kill them and who they are. And but again, we need the science to be able to lean on, and I may be proven wrong down the road. And if so, hey, I'll eat crow, but I'm not the first person to discuss this. There were researchers years and years ago that discussed this whole notion of dominance. behind doors in meetings 30 and 40 years ago, and they knew that it mattered. They talked openly about it mattering. I didn't just pull this stuff out of the air. It's been written for decades. And that's part of why I want to use this web platform as a way to show people what's been done on this bird, because there are people that came well before me that have forgotten as much about turkeys as I know. There are people that their contribution and their dedication is why I get to do what I do for a job. And frankly, their dedication is in a large part why we get to hunt this bird. And I really want people to be able to see the information that they put out there years ago and to understand the fight they went through to restore wild turkeys and the science that they did years ago, because quite frankly, a lot of it is the same science that we're publishing now. It's not saying anything differently. It's just that if it was conducted in 1965, it's not available in many ways. And nobody is posting information from 1965 on Instagram or on Twitter. So I think having a forum where people could go back and read, short pieces, here's what they did and here's what they found. I think that would be impactful to people, because they could understand mentally where we've been and how some of the things that are being discussed now are not new discussions. Those are discussions that have been had for decades. It's just now that people are seeing problems with this bird. Now the discussions are resurfacing again. And because of social media, there's so much that everybody can communicate, everybody can lend an opinion. And back when George Wright and George Hurst and Larry Van Gilder and some of these guys, Lovett Williams, were doing their work, this didn't exist. They could not disseminate their information like we can now. And that's a huge difference in how we function today versus how they functioned when we were learning what we currently learn, what we know about turkeys in a lot of ways.
So, Toxie, I'm scared we're going to lose you at some point. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? I want to make sure we give you a chance to ask, Mike, or if you just want to listen in.
I've been listening in. I always try to shut up and listen to him when he's on air, but every time he speaks, it makes me think of things to either reinforce what he's saying or it triggers a question I have. And so I thought of one, especially, one thing I think he would agree, if you get around a bunch of turkey hunters, researchers or not, everybody has their own theories, and theories are not proven yet. But, everybody's always got these theories here, there, and yonder. In fact, I always tip my hat first to Dr. George Hurst, because he was the first true pioneer researcher that we had, and Daddy too had a relationship with. And based on what he was finding in research, it changed my mind versus, what the old timers I was around always said about stuff. But I want to go back to what he said about one thing was maybe if it only makes a little difference this year, don't worry about it. But I would submit, and he can, obviously I'll yield to him, is little things over time change nature. I mean, the one thing that is indisputable, research or not, is nature evolves, period. I mean, put a bunch of pressure on your deer, watch them be 10 times more nocturnal, and go on and on and on. So I'd noticed that the turkeys we have at home came from over on the Mississippi River, which means they were likely descendants of the old original strain that when everything almost went extinct. I mean, that's plausible, don't you think, Doc?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just in general, they act so different than birds in other parts of the country, especially where they've been newer in the relocating them there. And I just wonder if there's any, if you are to always shoot the turkey that's most vocal over generations and generations, could you not change to where you end up evolving more to one that's less vocal, or some that aren't at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if that's just a theory, then I would be sure. Of course, again, 30 seconds, you might not sum all this up. If you can shoot, Daddy used to say, always don't, I've had some people say, shoot that strutting turkey, because that means all the other ones will get to start gobbling now. And maybe there's some credence to that too. Maybe both of these things are true, just like Forrest Gump said, both of them. But he would always shoot the turkey that hadn't been gobbling and leave the other one or two, whatever, to enjoy for another hunt. And that was just his way of thinking about it. But it just seems to me, if you shoot the subdominant one that's not gobbling, if you're sure that's the case, then you maybe are helping your genetics. Yeah, the biggest thing is you may have more success in nesting because that one's breeding more actively and is more experienced at, getting hens pregnant, which is great. But it just occurred to me, the hardest turkeys to hunt, maybe it's just hunting pressure too, that, ours tend to stay in big groups, and there will always be, every year, I'm so disappointed by the number of turkeys I know we have that aren't vocal at all. And I just wondering if there's something to that it's not an overnight thing, but over time, have we kind of bred a less gobbling and active turkey? Because I know I go to some other places and wow, they're so much more vocal, and a higher percentage of the male toms or turkeys are more vocal than ours. So anyway, just a thought.
Did he say toms?
What's a tom?
What?
What's a tom? I was going to ask Doc that.
But yeah, there has been research showing, on other species, for instance, on largemouth bass, showing that basically you can select against aggressive fish because you catch them. So you have these behavioral personalities, if you will. Certain fish are extremely aggressive. They'll attack almost any lure. They get caught out. And through time, you select for a less aggressive fish. There's work on other species showing the same. In fact, they're called behavioral syndromes, but it's just research on personalities. There's a lot of research worldwide ongoing. In fact, I have a student that's in my lab now. That's his shtick. That's what he's really interested in is understanding how these birds have different personalities. And we've studied it pretty extensively with hens, less so with toms or gobblers, to get Toxie back on board. But yeah, I mean, there's absolutely a distinct possibility that through time you would select against vocal toms because you're removing them from the population and you're selecting for toms that don't gobble as much. And there's no question that our gobbling data shows this, that basically, on these heavily hunted public lands anyway, gobbling activity just tanks by the second week of the season. And that's not just all the vocal birds are dead. That's certainly not the case. It's that a lot of the birds that are surviving are shutting up. They're changing their behavior. So, if you do this through generations, multiple generations, it is logical to think that at some point it will have an influence on future generations of birds and how they behave because you've selected for or against certain traits through time.
I'm just thinking like too, Doc, that if you shoot a lot of the dominant birds too, I'm just thinking, say you've got a pretty good sized place and, a fair amount of turkeys, and you shoot more of the dominant ones, and there's like more of the ratio, there's more or less dominant birds to a few really dominant birds. Those few can really shut up a bunch if there's not anybody to challenge them. It seems like it would be a more healthy breeding and gobbling atmosphere to have a lot of dominant birds challenging each other and wanting to fight and squabble over hens and whatever, it would seem to be. Then if you have nothing but just a few dominant birds, it might really be a bad situation, but I'll let you speak to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way they're supposed to function is, you're in an ideal world, you'd have, at least on, say, a large piece of property, you'd have multiple breeding groups of toms. So you'd have a group over here that's got 3 or 4 birds, a group over there that's got 3 or 4 birds, 2 over here, 3 over there. And within each one of those groups, there is a dominant bird. So on this one piece of property, you may have 4 or 5 groups of toms. So you got 4 or 5 dominant toms that are doing most of the breeding. You're probably going to have some single birds that are by themselves, and research has shown they breed very little. They do breed, but they don't breed as much as dominant birds. So in that scenario, if you're a hen and you're on this property, you've got access to multiple dominant birds. And that is a fitness advantage for you because you could breed with more than one of them. And then that increases the fitness of your clutch because you've got sperm from a multiple dominant birds, not just one. So yeah, this notion that they're supposed to function like that, that is the way they're supposed to function. And then at some point, they become irrelevant as to their social status because breeding has been completed or is largely completed. And at that point, it really doesn't matter who you shoot, as long as you don't shoot too many, too great a proportion of the population. Then by the following year, those dominance hierarchies are sorted back out, and there's new dominant birds that have proven themselves, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I got one more quick one. I got to have another one. He made me think again. So, in your opinion, I had to leave a bird that I could have a few birds. And I'm thinking about the Alabama season. They moved it back 10 days, but it goes into the first week or 10 days of May now. And so what's the best chance you would have a bird still being vocal and fun to hunt at that super late stage? Would it be one of the subdominant ones that never had anything to say, and since it quieted down, he might gobble? Or would it be probably one of the dominant ones that ran out of hens, so to speak? What would be the best chance to have a bird that was still vocal really late?
I honestly don't know how to answer that. I think in a lot of ways, it would depend on his experiences that season. If he had been heavily pressured and had been through the game a number of times, regardless of where he stands in the pecking order, he's probably not going to be that vocal. I think, I don't really know if it matters late in the season like that. What we tend to see late in the season is that, and I don't know who these turkeys are, but we see flare-ups in gobbling activity. So we'll see 3 or 4 or 5 days of nothing, like literally silence. And then all of a sudden one day, there's one bird at one of our listening devices or nearby that is just roaring. Now, what caused that? I don't know. Did he encounter a hen that the day before that was receptive? I don't know what's going on, but who that is socially, I don't have any idea. But that's kind of what the gobbling looks like, which we experience. We all, if you hunt late in the season, you've been in that scenario where day after day it sucks, and then one day it's like, man, where'd all these turkeys come from?
Yeah, it's exact. It seems to be a little more weather dependent. Then it gets really hot and muggy. It really shut them down a lot too. So, yeah, definitely experienced that in the last year. Don't you think too? They're gobbling. Some of that gobbling at the end is just turkeys getting back together, because that's, let's face it, when it's over with, they're all buddies again. They're all looking to get back together. They won't have anything to do with a hen after that. So, do you think some of the real late gobbling is locating each other and getting back together?
It could be. I think probably a lot of it is associated with toms that are seeing hens again that haven't been around them because they've been incubating nests and they've lost those nests. And,
I got you.
And the toms think they're receptive, although they may not be. And I think in some ways it mimics the ramp up we see in March, where toms start gobbling, but the hens aren't receptive. I think some of that happens late in the season too, where they start seeing hens again and they haven't been around them. And so their testosterone increases and they start gobbling.
Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Yeah. So, Landy, you look like you're about to bust.
Oh, always. I love talking about turkeys, That's true.
Come on, ask him a question.
Yeah, Doc, could you just kind of, and this is my question, and I look on the list of people that have submitted questions, and our buddy at David Hawley at the Wild Turkey Report has this same question. So could you just kind of, walk us through the flock behavior that's happening now and how it will transition throughout the season, ultimately ending up when the broods hatch, or is that too much to ask?
No, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So right now we're about to be in the middle of February, and the birds you're seeing are in distinct winter flocks. Those winter flocks are sex specific in that you see hens that are together. There's usually some jakes hanging around them. And then you've got flocks of toms that are by themselves that you may see them around the flocks of hens, but they're not really interacting with each other. They may strut and display right now, particularly on warmer days, but those winter flocks are intact. They're moving around looking for food. And then in about a month, you're going to start seeing those winter flocks split up into smaller social groups. What we're finding is that within those social groups of hens, so let's say you go from 20 hens in a winter flock now to 4 groups of 5 in mid-March. Those 4 groups of 5 are typically going to be hens that are not related to each other, which is pretty interesting.
It is.
That if you think about it, makes sense from the standpoint of you've got a group of hens that are not sisters that are going to breed with dominant toms in their home range. So when they go incubate a nest, they're not probably going to be near a close relative of theirs. They're going to be removed from close relatives. And then, so those hens will breed with a dominant bird or multiple dominant birds. Other toms, sometimes single birds that are by themselves will sneak in breeding opportunities too. And regardless, the hens become solitary. They start laying. When they're laying, they're still hanging around with other hens, but they'll start sneaking off for more time each day, laying an egg in the clutch. They'll start spending time at the nest during the laying sequence when they're kind of sitting there, actually incubating the nest for an hour or so at a time. And then they start continuous incubation. They're loners. This is when, this is during our turkey seasons. You see one hen, she's by herself. If she fails and she quits for the year, then she goes and finds other hens and she flocks back up, which that's not what you want to see, say in May. If you're seeing groups of 3 and 4 hens in May, that's a bad sign. If she's lucky enough to hatch, then she spends the first couple of weeks with her brood alone. During that time, they become very close in a relationship standpoint. They imprint to her. They grow very rapidly, and then she starts interacting with other brood hens, and they form those large summer flocks that we hope to see every year that have 3 hens and 15 poults, or 4 hens and 20 poults. And those are the groups in the summer that then become the winter flocks we're seeing right now.
That's what I call sunshine.
Really helps me just thinking about that whole process, what they're going through and the whole perspective, to give you perspective on what to do.
Yeah. Now, Doc, I hate to do this to you, but I think Mac's got a question.
Mac's got more than one.
Good talking to you, sir.
Here it comes, the hurricane.
I know. Really, I've always been interested on how weather affects the gobbling patterns, and from looking at your website, I read the article about the barometric pressure and how the warmer days in the southern turkeys, they might not gobble as much. But say you're looking at a 5-day forecast and it is just mild early season, mid-March, early April. What do you see as far as the gobbling activity, say for like day 1 through 3? And do they taper off? Do they gobble the same, back-to-back days? Or kind of, I guess, how does that gobbling activity change when all conditions are the same?
Yes, so that article you're referencing, so the important thing to know in that data set was the positive relationship between gobbling and barometric pressure. In other words, expect to hear more gobbling as barometric pressure is rising. That's only related to the day before. So when you have a scenario where a frontal system passes and you have that day after the passage, when the barometric pressure is rising relative to the day before, gobbling was higher. So across a multiple day period, that relationship wouldn't necessarily hold, if that makes sense, Mac. It was versus the day before. That was the impactful part of the analysis. Basically, that's where the data were the clearest, that when the barometric pressure is rising as a frontal passage occurs, that's when you should expect gobbling compared to the day before to be dramatically higher.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I tell you, Doc, the being able to apply this the science that you guys have learned and that y'all explained to us to hunting scenarios really kind of does help make things. When you think back on experiences that you've had through your life, you go, "Well, that's what
Makes
that
more
was all
sense.
about."
That's right.
But there's one that you've explained to us about if you went to a roost site and hunted a particular bird 3 or 4 mornings in a row, that it logically might not be the same bird every time. I've had a hard time wrapping my mind around that because I've just always thought it was the same bird. He's just doing something different.
I get people to argue with me about this as much as anything other than spur length being a reliable way to age a bird, but I don't really know how else to say this, but we have a number of examples where Tom's wearing GPS units. Tom A leaves his roost site. He flies down in the morning. He moves out of the area, and Tom B comes that afternoon and roosts in the exact same spot where Tom A was the day before. And we see this routinely. And if you guys know as well as I do, and if you've spent any time in the same general area hunting turkeys for, say, a decade, you know there are just certain places that turkeys roost. And why they're there versus some other spot, we don't really understand entirely. But there are just some spots that are better roosting habitat. They are safer, they project sound better, birds can access hens and they know it. So it makes sense to me that if you've got a population of male, these toms are spending time around each other, they all know where these roost sites are. So if you're moving about your range and you don't hear your buddy, then maybe you go check that roost site out. And if it's vacant, you use it. And I think personally, some of this afternoon gobbling that you hear sometimes, I personally think that some of that is just toms checking up on each other. They're just trying to see who's around. But we see numerous examples of this, and it begs the question, that day that bird flew down and he went west, you come back in the next morning and you anticipate that move and he goes east, and you think to yourself, I must have screwed that up. He didn't like that tree yelp, he heard me walk in, whatever. Maybe you're overthinking it. Maybe that was literally a different bird who just had a different agenda that day. His buddy that had the agenda that had west the day before is gone. He's 2 miles down the road. That's what the data suggests. It's really interesting because I've had that crap happen to me a lot. And when I was younger, I would get so frustrated. In fact, I can remember as like a grad student thinking how bad I sucked because I was studying turkeys and I could not reliably kill one. I would go and I'd be like, he just did that yesterday. He must have heard me. He didn't like that call. He didn't like that fly down. He heard me walking in the leaves. He heard me crunching gravel. And I would think up 50 excuses for how I screwed that up. And it eroded my confidence to the point where at the end of the season, I'd have to have a mental reset. I would overthink everything. And now thinking back through the years, I should have just had a little more fun and realized that maybe he heard me crunch the leaves. Maybe he realized something was wrong, or maybe it wasn't even the same turkey. Maybe he was just, my buddy that I'd hunted 2 days in a row was down on the 2 properties down. And now he's giving the backdoor treatment to somebody else on 2 farms down that he was giving me,
I always just blame Lanny. That always seemed to work out for me.
You seem to do that with lots of things in life.
It
does work out. Right.
Well, that's just interesting. And when I'm hunting, I'm pretty I pay attention to my watch when I'm sitting there in the morning and I hear that first gobble. No matter where it is, I kind of mark it on my watch. And then as the season goes by, it gets a little earlier every morning. But it amazes me how they seem to know it. 6:21. That's when we're gonna start gobbling, and so other birds know that too. If from what we're talking about, and
they're there all the time. That's right.
I mean, for me, it's crazy the days that you're just about to get up and go somewhere else because it's long past gobbling time, and they start, 20 minutes later than they do. So I've never been able to set a watch by them much, Bobby. I'm telling you, not much.
One thing I'm really interested in, I have a student that is digging into these data, and I really can't wait for him to come up with some findings so I can show it to people, is how variable are toms in their roosting behavior? In other words, are there some that fly down pretty consistently in the morning? Are there some that fly down later? How predictable are their movements once they fly down? So within an individual bird, does he tend to head only in certain directions from his roost? Is it more random? And how much does that vary across a group of birds? Because what we're seeing with the hen data is if you plot out like incubation behaviors or behaviors while she's laying, it's like you have bird 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there's this continuum of behaviors. And I just wonder I think toms are going to be the same way. And I think what we're going to end up seeing, maybe I'll be wrong, is that there's so much variation that you have no idea what you're going to encounter. That maybe there are some birds, to Toxie's point, maybe there's some birds, I've hunted birds that didn't fly down on time, and I've often thought maybe I spooked them, or maybe they figured out something was wrong and they stayed in the tree. But I'm also wondering whether there's just some birds that are wired different in these populations, and they just behave differently. They have a strategy that's worked for them, and they follow the script until they die of old age, or they get shot or get eaten by a predator or whatever it is. And if so, that maybe some of what we're seeing is not us really, it's just them. They're just variable in the way they behave. And I'm really curious to see the roosting data, because roost data to me are so cool. I'm so fascinated by it, because if you think about it, you got a 20-pound bird that sleeps in a tree, and they don't roost everywhere. They only roost in certain places in their home range. So those places are money. Like think about it. They spend all night, they're defenseless in this spot, because that is, in their mind, that is the best place to hunker down all night. It's also the best place to project your sound. It's the best place to be close to hens. Their roost sites are gold to me. So understanding what goes on in their mind and how they use roost sites, to me, is really fascinating. And as a turkey hunter, that's where we start our day. That's where we start the game, is at that roost site or nearby. It's just fascinating. And I have one student, well, actually two now, that are really interested in the roosting data. And that's actually our strongest data set that we have. We have roost locations on every bird we've ever tracked every night. So it's the creme de la creme of the data sets. We have literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of roost locations. I just have to have somebody ready to go through the data. And luckily, I have two folks now that are super interested in it.
How much will that home range vary you're talking about? Is it resource driven, or do you see a lot of variability just over geographical landscape?
Both. Yeah. You do see a lot of differences in range sizes across the subspecies, which you would expect.
Yeah.
Easterns tend to have smaller home ranges than some of your western subspecies that have to travel, to get from foraging areas to roost sites. And we also see a ton of variation within a population, say of Easterns, just across individual birds. There's some birds that just have a small home range, and there's some birds that just have a large home range. And when you look at kind of what could be influencing it, it doesn't appear to be habitat. It doesn't appear to be things that we can kind of put our finger on. There's just, I personally think that there are just personalities.
Yeah, just preferences.
Yeah, there's just certain birds that have a strategy that involves not moving much, and they can make it work because there's resources there. And there's other birds that, even if the resources are there, their personality is to cover more ground.
Makes sense.
Dr. Mike, I got a lot of questions, but one, back to the roost data. Do you find that longbeards, I guess what I'm asking is, do hens roost together or in a same roost location more than, say, like a group of longbeards? Or like, do the males roost together more, or the females roost together more from your data?
It depends on the timing of the year. So like right now, they're all together. You know, I mean, you've got groups of hens that are roosting together. You've got groups of toms that are roosting together. But as the spring approaches, when they split up into those small social groups, they are roosting close to each other, not necessarily on top of each other, but close to each other. And then I don't know the answer to this question, but one of the students that's digging into this will have answers soon. It appears that they start altering their roosting when they start laying. And that would make sense to me, that they would start perhaps distancing themselves from other hens and roosting in areas that maybe they haven't roosted in before, because they're now tethered to that nest site. In other words, they can only move a certain distance away from it because they have to get back to it each day to lay. So I think it just depends on the time of year, because at that same time, as you know, let's say that's the first week of April, it's routine to have, toms that are roosting together. But what I've also noticed, and the roost data bear this out, is roosting together isn't always they're on top of each other. They may be on the same ridge and they are several hundred yards apart, and they fly down and they end up together an hour later. Not necessarily roosted together, but they were close enough to be able to hear each other.
You were talking earlier about how gobblers move from roost area to roost area in the spring. They don't always roost in the same trees. Are the hens doing the same, or is it generally like these three hens stay in the same area and then another subgroup stays in that?
I don't know. We have not until very recently started digging into the hen roost data. Our initial, for obvious reasons, interest was in the males. I mean, we wanted to know what these toms were doing, and that's the sexier,
Sure.
stuff to begin with. But like I said, it took me getting someone in my lab that was interested in the hen roosting data to be able to start teasing it out. So I'll be able to answer that soon.
That's good. We're still finding stuff to,
Oh, we could sit. I mean, right now we've got, several thousand birds worth of GPS data. And we've got well over 1,000, let's see, for each subspecies, we're, in the 2,000 plus nest range, hundreds of broods, tens of millions of GPS locations. I could retire, I could quit tomorrow and not hire another student and employ people for the next decade that did nothing but work on data. And we'd never even, there would still be information there that we can't tap into. And I'm not going to do this right now, but at some point we'll make these data available to people, to other researchers, so they can use it, because it has potential to help the bird if when I'm gone from this, this job, and I move on to other things in my life that I care about. Somebody needs to go back and take the data are still going to be sitting then and do something with them because they're impactful and they could. We're just, Dudley, we're trying to scratch the surface now on the big things that are either super interesting to the agencies. I mean, the bottom line is they're paying us to do contract work and they tell us what they want to know and we're paid to answer them. So some of the things that we're talking about here is irrelevant to an agency. You know, they don't care about roost fidelity and whether the same group of hens, you know, does that behavior. Whereas you and I think that's just the coolest thing, you know. So I'm in this constant balancing act where I'm challenging my students and my postdocs to produce products that the agencies are paying for because that's our job, and also generating content that everyone else that matters wants to see. And my people, you know, I love my students, I love my staff, and they work really hard for me. And they do it because they respect me, but they also cherish the bird, and they want to know all this stuff too. So they're pulling double duty. They're doing their day jobs, and then they're still, you know, I shoot an email out on Saturday. And I'm like, hey, what about a social media post on this? And it's like, okay, I'll do that in my spare time. I'll generate you a map. So that's actually why you'll see me lay off of some of the maps and things like that at times, because it's a lot of work for my folks to produce that content, and I need to leave them alone sometimes and let them do their jobs.
For sure.
So, Mike, we got a little bit of good news. I think back when all that cold weather was happening, you and I were exchanging some texts, and I was showing you how the plots over here in this part of the world just got burnt so bad by that cold weather. I'm just getting text after text every day with people saying my clover's coming back.
Clover's doing good, yeah.
And it's just so relieving to know that stuff is popping back up from the root system out there, because I think clover is something I think everybody would agree it can be a big part of a bird's diet, and as gamekeepers, that's a good thing for guys to have established on their property as a good perennial clover plot, right?
No question. Yeah, we see extensive use of clover right now, and that use will continue all the way until it burns in the summer. In fact, we see a lot of brood use of clover patches, particularly those, and I've mentioned this on podcasts with you before, particularly ones that had cereal grains like wheat or oats mixed in, and those wheat or oats grow up and they turn brown with seed on them. 3-week-old and older poults that are fairly large and are mobile and can flutter up onto those old stalks. If you watch turkeys move through those clover patches, they'll flush insects, and a lot of times those insects will fly up onto those stalks of oats or wheat, and the birds can hop off the ground and grab the insects. So we see a lot of use of clover from December on into even June in the deep South. So critical plant. And when you sent me that text, I remember responding to you and saying, gosh, that's awful, because my plots here, knock on wood, did not burn like that. And there was some yellowing, but most of the yellowing was in the cereal grains and not in the clover. So the last time I checked our plots here, they were beautiful. So I'm optimistic.
So, Mike, have you ever heard of somebody putting out crickets in the spring of the year, going to the bait shop and buying 5,000, 10,000 crickets?
You got to get that many crickets delivered.
Don't give anybody any ideas.
We've heard a rumor of a guy doing this. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, but so my daughter, it's a funny story. My daughter hates crickets. And the reason she does is because I took her and Austin to a camp years ago, and it was infested with crickets. But when I say infested, I mean the poor thing was laying on a bunk bed with my lab, and they are covered in crickets. Crickets everywhere, all over the sleeping bags, everywhere. And of course, Austin and I, we didn't care. We slept, get up, go hunt. But she still to this day is traumatized by a cricket. If she sees a cricket, she's like, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to hear it. So under that scenario you just played out, I could see my daughter being utterly traumatized by the notion of somebody releasing 5,000.
Yeah.
Supplemental feeding.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious. So
I ate a cricket.
Yep.
I had a gunnery sergeant at Quantico Marine Corps Base. I was a technician there. And if you've ever been around gunnery sergeants, they're a special type of person. Well, he was a character, absolute character. And he saw these crickets that we had. We were trying to fish in one of the ponds on the base. And as you can imagine, access is pretty tightly controlled on Quantico. So there's certain places we could go fish and certain places we couldn't. Well, we hadn't caught crap. I mean, we had nothing. So we had this huge container of crickets, and he reaches in the container and appears to throw this cricket in his mouth. And I started laughing at him, and we called him Gunny. And I said, Gunny, you didn't eat that cricket. Come on, man. He goes, yes, I did. He grabs another one, and I think he's throwing it past his head. So after 4 or 5, he's like, what do you want me to do to prove this? I said, I want you to eat that where I can see it. So he ate this cricket. And he said, try one. And I said, I'm not eating that. And so he starts in on, as you can imagine, with some of the terminology that he uses.
Probably quite convincing. Yeah.
So I ate one. And then I ate another one. They actually have this nutty, kind of rich flavor. If you can get past the texture, and there was no alcohol involved.
yeah.
I know Dudley's eaten one.
I was going to, no.
Have you not eaten a cricket?
I've eaten an ant.
Yeah, he tastes everything. I was just going to say.
Oh, well, look, we know Mike's got to go. We appreciate you being here with us, Mike. But before we let you go, Dudley's got wants to rapid fire a few questions. So rapid fire is brought to you by our friends at Springfield Armory. And I'm going to turn it over to Dudley. And
Mike, I think we've done this before, but you're on Zoom, so it may be a little more difficult. But I'm going to try to be quick with the questions, and I want you to try to be quick with the answers. And you can say neither or both if you'd like.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Cheryl Teagues or Farrah Fawcett?
Farrah Fawcett.
Waffles or pancakes?
Waffles.
Turkey meat or deer meat?
Deer.
Box call or trumpet?
Neither.
Mouth call or pot call?
Mouth.
What's worse on a long hunt? Feet wet right out of the boat or forgot your snack?
Oh, feet wet.
April or December?
April all day long.
May or November?
Oh, I'm going to go November there.
All right, there you go. Good answer. Favorite person, Marcus Lashley or Bronson Strickland? Just kidding.
You don't have to answer that.
Trying to get me in trouble.
Shoulder mount or Euro mount?
Shoulder.
Pecan or pecan?
This is a loaded question.
Pecan. All right, that's it.
Good job.
He did good. Oh, well.
Bronson's going to be upset that I didn't answer that. He's going to be upset.
Yeah.
Should have said neither.
Yeah. Okay.
Or both.
Yeah, that's right.
Bronson's one of my very closest friends, so I couldn't answer that and be disrespectful to Marcus, who I have a lot of respect for. But Bronson, we're very close.
All in good fun. We love them both.
It was. So look, and as we like to do with you, we've got one more. We've got a trivia question, and you've got a chance to make your wife proud here, Mike. And I'm going to turn it over to Mac. Go ahead.
All right, so this one's right up your alley, Dr. Mike. So you're playing for Michael Cates. He left us a really nice review, and the prize is a wood duck nesting box by Duck Hut, and don't ask me where I got it. All right, so in a movie we all love, Smokey and the Bandit, Snowman, played by Jerry Reed, had a canine co-pilot. What was his name?
Fred.
Okay.
He nailed it.
All right, and Bobby threw one bonus question in here for you. What was the Bandit's license plate?
Bandit 1.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
killed
man.
it. Yeah, get him, yeah.
Yeah. So answering that, I'm gonna send to Mike this raccoon baculum.
Baculum. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. That was you had that last week, didn't you?
We did. Mike, we ate a raccoon last week, or I should say, we cooked a raccoon and then we looked at it.
Oh,
Ugh.
we ate it.
Yeah, raccoon
Yeah,
tacos.
We didn't eat it. I didn't eat it. I mean, I tried a bite of it. I just couldn't make myself eat it.
Did you swat?
It's just strong to me. It's got a really strong flavor, I think.
Yeah.
I don't want that baculum, so you can
Oh, we'll give that away next
He's been
week,
stirring his
so.
coffee with it every morning.
He uses a toothpick.
Yeah.
So I would like to say that, Mac, there's a sentence on there about the dog Fred, about Burt Reynolds, why Burt Reynolds picked him out.
Yeah, so he was personally picked out by Burt Reynolds chiefly because it refused to obey commands.
Ah, it's a hound dog.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah, of course. Plays the role right.
Fred was pretty comical.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Mike, we enjoy having you when you're here, and we certainly want to help you every chance we get, and we'll be there at the NWTF, we're able to lock arms with you and help spread the message.
Yeah, exactly. Spread the word.
WildTurkeyLab.com.
There it is.
Well, I
Here we
appreciate
come.
it, guys. It was good joining you, as always. See you soon.
Yeah, well, we need to, and Toxie's still on here, and I'm going to ask this. We really need to take you turkey hunting because I just think it's something we need to do.
Bobby, thank you. I would love to go with you.
Lord have mercy. It all gets turned around.
Oh, quick draw.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we need to hear Mike yelp.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I'm always game. Best time of year is about to be upon us.
It
It
sure
sure
is.
is.
The season of rebirth.
Yes, sir. Amen to that.
All right. Well, Mike, you got anything else to add?
Nope, I'm good. Just remember, slow down. Slow down.
That's
take
right.
your time,
Yep.
breathe.
Enjoy the rebirth.
Yes,
That's for sure.
Yes, for sure.
It's special.
We'll see you. We'll see him at the 50th convention of the National Wild Turkey Federation next week. Quite a run.
Yeah, lots going on up there.
Yep, looking
Amazing.
forward to it.
Yep.
It's going to be busy.
It is. It is.
It is going to be the busiest one we've ever had, hands down. It's going to be chaos, but I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Well, I'll see y'all there.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
Mike.
You the man.
So, guys, we always talk. You know, we have
Yeah.
these professors, these doctors on here, and we always learn so much. And sometimes it's about the species, but I'll tell you, don't gloss over his comment about slow down.
Oh, 100%.
I can tell you, I mean, Tox is chiming in. It's the older you get. Lanny, you looking long in the tooth.
Let me tell you now, there's a lot of wisdom in those words, and it's specifically to turkey hunting. I do remember, years and years ago where it was just this fast-paced run and gun. We all talked about it's what we want to do, and you often miss the little nuances that make the time of the year so special. So, it's about being out there. To Toxie's point, you've taught me more than anybody the rebirth of everything in the spring. So,
The thing about it is we're all a part of nature too. We are. It's just a
That's
fact.
right.
And so there's something about getting out there and participating in it and being part of it. Not just like, killing something. It's
No.
that's great. I love doing it. But I'm just saying when you kind of become part of it, it just does something to your whole, your health, your whatever, spiritual well-being,
Sure.
everything, to connect to what's going on in the world. Because nature and all this stuff that drives, the world we live on is waking up. And it is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It sure
I can
is.
hear the birds chirping behind you.
Yeah, you can.
That's right.
We're getting more vocal every day. It's 70
Yeah.
degrees today. So I'll probably hear a turkey in the morning.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I sure wouldn't. It wasn't, but about maybe 2 weeks ago, one Saturday morning, I was deer hunting and I heard some turkeys gobble a couple times where I couldn't hunt them.
I'm looking down there at Mac, but he won't look back at me, so I think he might have some top secret information. No, he's not even just
Yeah.
breathing.
Got two things I need to say right quick. Hey, one, I love you guys. Two, See you guys. Deer season's still
Ciao.
See you May 1st.
Yeah. Lord, I think he kind of cut out on that last one.
I love it.
Yeah. So, but you know, kind of going back, what did we learn? I would say that's pretty important, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole slow down thing, I've never really been accused of going too fast, especially in the woods, but I'm gonna try
I damn sure have.
I'm gonna try to slow down even more this year.
Yeah. You are, Dudley. You're really good at reflecting in small and seeing the small stuff. You really are. So kudos to you.
Well, so I may need to speed up a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
You're missing out on
you're missing out on what's around the corner.
Yeah, probably need to try to kill a second.
I'm running off what's around the
turkey.
corner. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, look, we appreciate everybody listening. And, look, give us a review if you get a chance. So hit the subscribe button. That's really important, and we would appreciate that. And share it with your friends.
And I think, Mac, you know, before we go, we need to talk about these spring protein peas again.
Oh, yeah. So we've got a free shipping pre-sale on our spring protein peas. It's iron and clay and mung beans. It's a 20-pound bag, covers a half acre, 75% digestible nutrients, 25% crude protein, and over 8,500 pounds of forage per acre.
Yeah.
It's limited quantity right now. There's a drought this past year during the growing season.
Hard to get seed.
So we did a pre-sale on it. So get them while you can. And I do have one more thing I want to give a shout out to, Mr. Ricky Flint.
Oh yeah,
on his retirement.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Oh no, so he took a new role.
It's like in the conservation fund.
Yeah,
or
so
something.
he started I think on February 1st as the project manager for the Mississippi Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. So, I mean, congratulations
That's
to him.
big.
I mean, he's perfect for the job. I mean, he's all about the outdoor stewardship and conservation.
What a great guy and what a great part, you know, of MDWFP against my favorite agency, of course, but just a great guy and a great career. And now he's going to keep on working to get that funding we need for these wildlife. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, Ricky's a great guy. What else?
One more thing.
One more thing.
Never
Okay.
mind.
Yeah,
Never mind.
no,
I was going to
no.
talk more about spring protein peas, but I'm beating a dead bush here.
Yeah, beating a what?
Beating a dead horse.
Well, they're
Yeah.
not just good for deer. They're really good for upland birds and rabbits and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, this is the month of February. Go ahead and, you know, think about your food plots now and what you want to plant in the spring. Again, because of the limited supply of the seed, we wanted to go ahead and make it available to everybody. So it's going to be hard to get. So, yeah, jump on there and check it out and get some free shipping right now. So
PlantBiologic.com.
Yeah, and it's also good for the soil.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, that's been good. Richie, have you got anything? Glad to see you sitting over there and
Awake.
You stayed awake the whole time. That's good. So, it's about to get really busy around here for the next.
Ooh, we got a
2
lot.
months, so.
Now I'm going to go ahead and tell you, y'all go ahead and get all your honeydews done. I know I've got a massive list of things to get done between deer season and turkey season. Bobby, I can see the worry on your eyes too. You got a lot of stuff to do around the house. So
Yes,
get
it
out there and
adds
get them honeydews done so you can find it.
Last but not least, guys, and there's probably nobody still listening to this now
because
after
we're
we
rambling on for 75
But
minutes.
today is Valentine's Day. You need to go when this
What?
releases. This will be
I
will
thought so,
release
yeah.
on February 14th.
Run by the liquor
Don't forget
store.
about it. You need to go get some. Whatever
Good
it is.
advice. Good
Yeah.
advice. So this one will actually come out the week of NWTF.
So don't get an exercise machine like Bobby did
yeah,
a couple
the
years
only
ago.
man that's ever given his wife an exercise machine and gotten away with it.
Yeah, that was a Christmas present, and it was well received.
Shame, for real. I know what that thing means now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, looking around, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Mac.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.